The long dining table of the Kim mansion was filled with the unusual morning chatter. Silver cutlery clicked softly as the smell of the freshly baked bread lingered in the air. You moved quietly between the chair, pouring tea, laying out dishes, the picture of the dutiful daughter-in-law. Through your marriage with Taehyung had been arranged, 2 years of effect has finally softened him. He didn't speak much, but he had started waiting for you before meals, sometimes even asking about your day, small things. But to you, they were everything. Wine, pass me the kimchi, Mrs. Kim said warmly. Taehyung sat across from you, head slightly lower, flicking through the morning newspaper. You glared at him for a moment, the corner of your lips tugging into a soft smile. The quiet life, this little process, it was enough until the sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the ground hallway. Everyone turned their head just as the heavy door of the mansion opened, and there she was. Zoe, Mr. Kim's spoon dropped from his hand. Your heart stopped. Kim Sohee, the woman whose name had lived like a ghost inside these walls, the woman Taehyung once loved so freely he was ready to marry her until her tragic death 2 years ago. Now she stood there very much alive, her eyes shimmering with the tears as they locked into Taehyung. Taehyung, her voice broke, trembling with the longing. Taehyung froze, his newspaper slipping from his gaps. His breath hitched audibly before anyone could react. Zoe rushed forward and threw her arms around him. I missed you so much. I knew you missed me too. She sobbed into his chest. The entire Kim family kept raising from their seat in shock. Mrs. Kim hand trembling as she clutched her chest. Zoe, but you died, child. 2 years ago. You stood behind Taehyung, a tray of tea still in your hand, but your body felt like a stone, the world burning as you watched your husband fall asleep in his arms, as if no time had passed, as if you didn't exist. Taehyung slowly pulled away, his voice shaking. This can't be real. Are you real? So he nodded through tears, stepping toward Mrs. Kim. No, aunt, I didn't die. I was in coma. Some stranger saved me. I have been away all this time, but now I am here. She hugged Mrs. Kim tightly, who burst into tears. Oh, my poor child, my poor soul. The family crowd around, everyone explaining, questioning, crying in disbelief. Everyone except you. You stood silently behind them all like a shadow. The tray in your hand trembling, hand rattled silently, but nobody noticed, nobody turned, nobody asked what you feel. You blink hard, feeling the tears not to fall. All this little smile, the small effect, the fragile thread of the hope you had carried for 2 years suddenly felt foolish. Is this the end of my marriage? Will the love I built in silence shatter in one moment? A tear escaped, rolling down your cheek quickly. You wipe it away, standing straight, expressionless, lifeless, tall, and then Zoe's voice cut through the cross. Who is she? You flinch, your heart hammering. Zoe's finger pointed directly at you. The room felt silent, all eyes drawn toward you. At the last, before Mrs. Kim could answer, Jungkook's firm voice broke the tension. She is our sister-in-law. Everyone looked at him. He added, his gaze steady on Zoe. Taehyung wiped. The world hung heavy in the air. Zoe smiled further, her lips trembled. No, this can't be happening, she whispered to herself, eyes pointed in disbelief. And you stood there, your heart breaking quietly, the weight of her words sinking into your bones. The mansion felt heavier than ever. Zoe Ward had her disbelief still hung in the air. You stood froze, finger tightening around the tray, trying not to crumble under her sharp gaze. She's your wife, Zoe finally managed, her voice breaking, her eyes dreading from Jungkook to Taehyung. Silence filled the room. Everyone waited for Taehyung to speak, but his lips said nothing. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed into thin line, eyes clouded with something you couldn't read. Mrs. Kim hurriedly forward, placing a hand on Zoe's shoulder. Soya, things changed after you. After you left us, we thought you were gone forever. Taehyung needed stability, so we arranged his marriage with Moyen. Zoe's expressions shattered. No, aunt, no, you can't mean it. You promised me Taehyung and I would marry. He loved me. He couldn't just forget me. Her voice cracked and she turned back to Taehyung, clutching his arm desperately. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you didn't move on. Your chest tightened as you saw her finger clutch him, touching him like she belongs to him. Taehyung closed his eyes briefly as though the weight of the moment was crushing him. His voice was low, almost hoarse when he spoke. I married Wine 2 years ago. The word cut through the air, sharp and unreadable. Your voice catched for the first time since she appeared. He acknowledged you, but his voice carried no warmth, no affection, just you. Zoe stared back at a step, her hand slipping from his arm. No, Taehyung, you can't mean that. I was in a coma. I was fighting for my life, and all this time you married her. Mrs. Kim eyes freaking toward you, soft with the guilt, but she said nothing more. Jungkook lay at his feet. He glared at you, your pale face, your trembling hand, and stepping forward. So Young had no choice. The family was broken after the accident and you were declared. Wine didn't force this. She only ever gave. Zoe's eyes snapped at you, filled with the unspoken rage. And you, she whispered bitterly, you took my place. Your lips parted, but no word came. How could you defend yourself against a love story that began long before you existed in his life? Mrs. Kim finally intervened, his voice tone. Enough, Zoe. This isn't the time. You have just returned from the dead. We need to understand everything first. Let's sit down and talk calmly. Mrs. Kim guided Zoe to the sofa, flushing over her like a long-lost daughter. Meanwhile, you quite lower your eyes, stepping back, fading into the background again. No one noticed the way your shoulder sagged. No one noticed the silent tears spilling down your cheek. All attention was on Zoe and Taehyung. He still hadn't looked at you once. The Kim mansion buzzed with the usual life that evening. Servant whispered in the corridor. Relative made sudden visit. An entire household seems to be resolved around Zoe Marquis' return. You walked down the hallway, carry a tray of tea for Mrs. Kim. When hush, a voice different from the kitchen. Shoichi is back. What will happen to the young madam now? You know them loved Zoe more than life itself. This marriage was only forced after her death. Poor Wine. She is so kind, but how can she fight against love like that? The tray in your hand shook silently. You forced a smile as you entered in the kitchen to place it down. The maid fell silent, broke quickly, but you had already heard enough.